So our next speaker is Dr. Thomas Poole from our biology department, and he'll be talking to us about fish migration and dams. So Thomas, it's all yours.
Yeah, great. All right, so I'll be sharing a little bit of the work that I've been doing for about the last 10 years with a group of folks, primarily in Southeast Asia. And I'm an aquatic ecologist, so I'm used to studying fish and fish migration. But this project has really been about learning what are some of the trade-offs with regards to water, food, and energy. And as we start to do sustainable development and planning, especially with the lens of climate change, um, sort of how do we start balancing and thinking about all those issues kind of simultaneously. And my part of this project, which involves about 40 or so researchers of different disciplines, has really focused in on the dams. And we've been trying to get traction on this idea that if hydroelectric dams are going to be used to satisfy a really rapidly growing demand for power in Southeast Asia, how is that going to impact food security, and really to what level might food security be compromised with some of those energy choices? And I think that's really those are interesting trade-offs to evaluate really in any system, but in particular in Southeast Asia, I think it's an interesting and really relevant place to ask those questions because relative to many other places in the world, such as North America, the lower Mekong is relatively undammed. And yet they have over 200 large to medium-sized dams that are being scheduled to be on the main stem Mekong or major tributaries. It's also the largest freshwater fishery in the world, with now over $4 billion worth of revenue being generated US dollars each year. It's also a really unique system in terms of the actual species that are there. So over 800 native species, pretty much second to only the Amazon in richness. And then from a human perspective, throughout Southeast Asia, but in particular in Cambodia, where I do most of my work, a majority of the protein that folks are getting is not only from fish, but specifically from freshwater fish. A lot from the Mekong main stem and from the main lake in Cambodia called the Tonle Sap. And so some of the work that I wanted to present here and sort of boiling down a lot of different results have really led us to two main conclusions. And we really think that if hydroelectric dams are put into place as planned, that the altered flows, basically the change in the magnitude of water and the timing of when water is coming down the Mekong, is going to have pretty significant impacts on the food web complexity and importantly, the stability of those food webs. And we also think that there's going to be a decrease in the total fishery yields. So the amount of fish that fishermen and fisherwomen can take out of the system in a sustainable way is really going to be significantly reduced. Similarly, we think that the dams themselves are going to be major barriers for fish movement, even when they have fish passage devices in place. And that's going to be problematic for many reasons, but in particular, for large commercially valuable species that really need to move around the system pretty significantly. So in light of some of these talks and thinking about climate solutions, sort of, I wanted to review a little bit, maybe what we can glean from this. And I think for folks in Cambodia, and for that lens, it's really important for us to think about that many of the individuals within that country still are engaged regularly in subsistence fishing. And fishing is a regular part of the day for millions of people, and it's really intertwined with their livelihoods and culture. And so if we're making trade-off decisions with regards to power and food security, then there's a number of people within Cambodia which really do not have any safety net if those fisheries are eroded. And sort of what can we take away from that, sort of you and I? I think some of the main messages that I've taken home is that we really need to integrate thinking about water, food, and energy, and really think about those simultaneously as we think about climate solutions. Otherwise, we might be making trade-offs in a way that we don't think is very equitable or sustainable. And also thinking about different energy portfolios probably being needed in different places. So as we think about the hydroelectric infrastructure that's already in place here, for example, maybe that is something that is problematic, but not as problematic as someplace like Cambodia, where you're going to have 2 to 3 million people that are subsistence fishing that will have major problems if those fisheries are eroded. Thank you very much. That's what I've got for today.